Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here for another episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. The dust has settled on the draft for a couple of weeks since draft night in Pittsburgh, so we're going to do our first power rankings of the 2026 season. So as kind of the squads have taken shape, the rosters are taking shape with the new draft picks, we're ranking all 32 teams in order and see who we've got as our number one team at this very early stage, heading in towards the kickoff of the 2026 season. Just me and Byron this week. Joe's still on his travels. Byron, how are you?
Yeah, good. No travels for me, but yeah, doing well. Yeah, can't believe it's May already. Getting in towards mid-May as we talk, but yeah, it doesn't fly by. Hopefully, kickoff will be here very soon.
It will. Summer will be done, and then we'll be ready for the big kickoff. Yeah, no major news to talk about this week. We're still doing the Aaron Rodgers dance. Whether it will he or won't he return to the Steelers for the 2026 season. I think he's visiting, so I'm sure he will. And I'm sure we'll find out about that in about 6 weeks' time when it's confirmed that he's back. But shall we just get into our power rankings then? We've kind of split the 32 teams into kind of 4 quarters. Let's start at the bottom rung of the NFL ladder. Unanimously, we've got the Miami Dolphins ranked at 32. I think that's probably where we would have had them heading into the draft. Was there anything they did on draft day, on draft weekend, that you kind of felt would make them move at all?
No, I don't really think there's much they could have done to get out of the bottom 2, certainly. I just think, and I think it would have been a real miracle act, really, to get above 31, to get above 32, because they just stripped it down to the parts. I think they've drafted pretty well. I think they've done well to take a long-term view on things. But for the 2026 season, they're so talent deficient right now. There's an awful lot of pressure on Malik Willis to be competent. And I do feel a little bit for him, because it's this is your one shot really at being an NFL starter. And we've surrounded you with, number one receiver is going to be Tutu Atwell or Malik Washington, probably. So that isn't what you'd like as your number one receiver, is it? Let's just be completely blunt. Seydou Toure, we're very excited to see the tight end from England. But again, don't see him really rising them up above 32 at this point. I credit to Miami taking a long-term view. That's about the nicest thing we can say about their roster in 2026. They're going to get a new quarterback next year. Unless Malik Willis is absolutely lights out, which we can't really expect him to be, because that'd be an incredibly unfair expectation. But yeah, I don't think there's much there for Miami, and I think they're taking a real long-term view, go down to the studs and restart essentially. So
yeah, I think I'm interested. The two first round picks that they made. Let's see, I thought taking Caden Proctor at 12 seemed a bit high. They said they're going to play him at guard in 2026. So that's interesting, just a way to potentially ease him in. But I think that interior of the offensive line has got better. So as a result, they are planning on being run heavy. So that helps. And I really liked the San Diego State corner as well, Chris Johnson. Very interested to see how he will come. So I think that's, they're players who should be productive players for them for the long term. So yeah, again, kind of probably the strategy is right and the way going about it, but it's just hard to be excited about that project in its current state. I think maybe if we know who the long-term quarterback's going to be and things like that, that'd be different, but that's not where we're at with this project. Next up, the Cardinals unanimously 31. So the Dolphins were unanimously 32. The worst score you can get in our power rankings. The Cardinals not far off at 93. Again, I think probably some discussions taking Love at 3, not doing what Miami are trying to do, which is build it the right way.
Yeah,
I think he's kind of where we're at with the Cardinals. Titans at 30. Again, pretty consensus, 29, 30, 28. We have them ranked. The Raiders, let's talk about them. So I had them 30, you 29, Joe 27. Yeah, is it again top when you talk about kind of rebuilds? Are they doing this kind of like a quicker route? The Raiders, they've got their guy at quarterback. They've filled kind of some key positions, improved that O-line a bit. The defense has got a lot better through free agency.
Yeah.
Does that seem about right for where they are in their journey right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think as well, getting, if you look at it in kind of totality from the end of last season till today, I think getting rid of the Pete Carroll experience is a big boost as well. I mean, 29, I've got them 29 they are overall. It isn't like a huge leap from the end of the season when they're probably 32, 31, 30, But I think there's a lot brighter future. It feels like they're getting Linderbaum on the line. Work still needs to be done at receiver, but there's receivers you can get as like patches even now in free agency. But I do feel kind of confident they're going about things, like you say, the right way. They got the number 1 pick. They've used it as you should on the franchise quarterback who we expect to be. We've got Cousins there to tide him along. And it feels a little like Washington did that first year under Jaden Daniels. Have kind of just put around, competent pieces on the defense, competent older pieces around him. So it doesn't feel totally rebuildy, but those players won't be there when the Raiders hopefully are good in 2 years' time. And nobody's expecting them to compete for anything this year. So, we'll see how much play Mendoza gets. Hopefully a lot. We don't want to see him sit all 17 games, even if that's, ultimately what's good for him. We want to see him on the field sooner rather than later, of course. And, see what Clint Kubiak has got cooking. The line maybe hasn't had so many name upgrades other than Lindenbaum, but I think a competent coach and a competent scheme can cover up an awful lot of that. We look at going into last year, none of us were raving that the Seahawks offensive line was going to be one of the best in the league. Obviously they added Grace Abel, like the Raiders have added Tyler Lindenbaum here, but I think a lot of credit goes to Clint Kubiak for, settling that line down and getting them to play the best they have in, an awful long time in Seattle. So I think that can't be understated as well.
Yeah, I like the pick Trey Zune the third from Texas A&M. So I think played a lot of tackle, played at center, but it's probably going to play at guard for the Raiders, the 3rd round pick. And I think again that's just an upgrade of that interior of the O line. Genty needs it. Mendoza's going to need it. I think I sort of like where the Raiders are going. Again, for me, I had them at 30 just because I guess that outside of Bowers, it's the pass catching core. It's tough, and that's going to be hard for Mendoza maybe for a year or 2, depending where they go, until they get him at least a 1 and probably some better depth. But again, that's the time thing. The Browns pretty unanimous at 28 for us, pretty much. The New York Jets. Let's talk about their, I suppose, again, another team rebuild. A lot of teams down here rebuilding. Their 3 first-round picks. Again, reason to be excited. Again, it's Geno for now. Don't know, it's likely going to be somebody else, a rookie in 2027. But does that feel like that could be the best situation for one of the 2027 rookie quarterbacks to walk into?
Yeah, I really think so. I'm not saying I wanted to rank the Jets higher, but considering they're at 27, I kind of have a positive feeling about the Jets. I've always been a Geno stan, but I'm not going to sit here and say like he's a franchise quarterback. He was terrible last year, but again, I'm going to pin some of that on the Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly experience. I don't think he was as bad as he looked last year at times. And if he is, they're screwed, obviously. They don't have any backup. They've got Cade Klubnik and Brady Cook and Bailey Zappi eventually if he gets that. But yeah, you look at the tackles. You've got Fashanu. You've got Membu, who we were both high on both of those coming out. You've got Joe Tippmann, who's a contract year. Guard and center senior guys, not going to, set the world on fire. But that's a really strong foundation. Then you've also got Garrett Wilson, who's a really strong wide receiver. They've just drafted Omar Cooper as your 2. Just took the shot on Kenyon Sadiq and Mason Taylor back-to-back years at your tight end, 2 young pieces. Sadiq, obviously, a huge question mark. The projectables are off the chart. The production hasn't been, but we will see. Between him and Omar Cooper, you've got an awful lot of yak ability there. So, and it's all young. So, yeah, I think it's a really good spot for a young rookie to go into next year. And I just don't really hate the team right now. You had 3 first-round picks. You also had D'Angelo Pons in the 2nd round. I think they've just really done it's easy to do a good job when you have, 2 first-round picks end up trading up for another one. But yeah, adding David Bailey in there. You had Pons in there. They obviously added T'Vondre Sweat earlier in the process as well.
Yeah.
I like everything the Jets have done this offseason, weirdly. The coach is a huge question mark. But I dare say it can't be any worse than last year. The Jets were, the famous clip is obviously Aaron Glenn, September dancing down the sideline. And again, they went on to lose. Well, how many times did they lose that game, realistically? Not very many. So maybe just and it's hard to say with the Jets because it's like saying, well, Spurs will stay up because things won't go bad luck for Tottenham Hotspur. It's like, well, things often go that way because they are the Jets, because they are Tottenham Hotspur, they are Jetsy, to coin a phrase. But I look at what they have on paper. I don't love Frank Reich, obviously. as an OC. Like, if it was Frank Reich 10 years ago, I'd be more excited about it. But he has called plays in the NFL before. He's not a total unknown. I think, Aaron Glenn's gone for like maybe a more of a, let's keep things on a steady line here. And yeah, I don't think the Jets will be challenging for the playoffs, but I think there's reasons for optimism.
Yeah, and Frank Reich will be fired before the end of the season. It's just the way it goes with him at the minute. Like, I think he's still getting jobs. Anyway, but yeah, kind of weird. Out of all those moves and things that they've done, actually, just the overall how they've handled the defensive line as a whole, I think is what I've been most impressed with the Jets. So the move to move Jermaine Johnson. I'm a big fan of Devondre Sweat. We spoke about him loads. Played many of his highlights during the episodes when we've done review shows. Big body in the middle. That interior of the line is improved, and then they've got obviously the name in Bailey, the star at the top of the draft, and some depth in as well. And that defensive line is so much better. The old line, as you mentioned, is stacked with kind of first round picks. Shame he didn't work out with Vera Tucker, obviously, and he got injured. So that's probably a problem that potentially still needs fixing for the Jets. Maybe for one of the 6th round pick maybe works out, Cooper from Miami. But yeah, that's probably the only other bit that I think is a problem. But I think the future is bright. And I think, starting at 27, a good spot. We then have the Falcons in 26, and then the Giants. So again, I probably outside this in the Falcons, the Falcons could maybe live in the second page or the next quartile of teams. Giants at 21. Both of you and Joe have got them at 25, and 25 is where they've landed. A big fan of what New York did in the first round of the draft. I think Reese and Maui and just really, really good foundation pieces for John Harbaugh. I think it's time with what we saw from Jackson Dart. Scatterbo should be back. Maybe they can train, them two not killing themselves through concussions. I don't know if they can, but obviously we've got Malik Neighbors. Obviously, it's just been a while since we've talked about him, and coming off his 8. I think it's exciting times, New York Giants, because you're going to have all of that with a competent level of coaching that they haven't had since Tom Coughlin.
Yeah. I think that's in play. I think my slight pushback, I've got them at 25. It's not like we've got them at 32 and 6, It's like, I think on paper things are fine. I do have issues like second wide receiver / tight end. Like Isaiah Likely's been a nice idea for a long time. Darius Slayton just can't leave New York. Whatever happens, he's always there for one big game a year. Darnell Mooney looks absolutely shot last year. It's a lot of pressure on Malik Neighbors returning from his ACL to like be competent, not competent, but like ready to go early. And I just, with the Giants defense, the names look good. I think DJ Reader replacing Dexter Lawrence is really smart. I think that's a really good pick. You get Maui Noah and DJ Reader for Dexter Lawrence, essentially. I think that's a really good team building. I think the Giants maybe in 20, I'm looking more to 27 with the Giants of continue that progression, get Reese acclimatized to the NFL. I think, again, they've had a really good offseason. And my one, not maybe slight hesitation, I'm really to see John Harbaugh in somewhere that isn't Baltimore. Because there was plenty of times during the last 2 years where we've sat and said, the issue with the Ravens that they haven't progressed as far as we'd like them to is John Harbaugh. And I'm not going to say he's not a good coach, but, I think he's definitely going to be an improvement on what the Giants have had. But I'm just a little nervous. And I don't think 21 is unfair by any means, but I've seen some people have put like the Giants as a potential playoff team. And I'm like, I think you're maybe just getting a little ahead of your skis here. I think I want to see it first. But 21, I think, is absolutely fine. That's just a little higher than I have them. But, like I say, I've seen some pundits talking of playoff challenging. I think that's just getting a little too early for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because we haven't seen one of these like old school CEO style head coaches move and take up anywhere new for, I can't remember, a while.
Yeah.
John Harbaugh isn't offensive or defensive specialist.
No,
special teams coach. That's kind of how he made his name. And yeah, it's that leadership element is the bit I think that Giants have been missing in that head coaching position. And so it's it's key that the hires are right around him. But I think there's enough talent there, and I think just having that, maybe just some more discipline and just experienced leadership at the helm, as opposed to being a offensive guy like Dayball was, or defensive guys like they've had before. So yeah, when you look at that lineup, just of who they've had, and I think we did a thing naming them off on an episode, but like your Ben McAdoo's and your Joe Judges and things like that, and then you go, well, John Harbaugh's there now, and you think it's such an upgrade on where they've been before. So yeah. Potentially a good time to head for Big Blue. Could have an exciting season. All right, let's move to our third quartile, 17 to 24. So we got the Bucks at 24. That might be a surprise for me to see, because they were a perennial part of our top quarter.
Yeah.
Top 12 really, all throughout the season last season. And we've all got similar thoughts. I had the Bucks down actually on the fourth page, but I'm at 25, you at 22, Joe at 21. They fall in at 24. Why is this, I suppose, why has this been such a bad off season for the Bucks?
Another change at OC again. So, I mean, Zach Robinson comes in, and I think the biggest problem with the offense last year was that Baker Mayfield and Igbuka were both injured in the second half of the season. And Baker Mayfield especially plays, he's a starting quarterback. So, like, if he's playing injured through an entire second half of the year, that's going to be a huge impact. And, if you watch the Falcons offense last year, you weren't thinking, oh, this is a guy who's going to get a new job as an OC. This is Zach Robinson. Like, this is a offense that's ticking. It's like, oh, he's got another OC job. Okay, I guess. It's not an exciting new name. They lost Mike Evans, obviously. Lost Levante David. It just feels a little bit like going through the motions. I do love that they got Ruben Bain. Obviously, how can you not pick 15, 16, whatever number they were picking, 16, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, if a player like Ruben Bain falls to you, that's going to elevate you in my mind, because I think one of the problems they've had the last few years is they've no pass rush. Well, if the third best pass rusher in the draft falls to you that far in the draft, then that's really going to help. I thought, the chance might have taken Ty Simpson if he was available. They might have taken like Kenyon Sadiq if Ruben Bain hadn't fell. Skill position player. But I think, with Cade Otton, you can kind of get by. Igbuka, Godwin, McMillan. I kind of like Ted Hurst, a late receiver. They took a chance on it as like a player to progress and develop. But yeah, I would have had them probably lower, probably close to your 25 if they hadn't landed Ruben Bain. But I think, it's a lot of pressure obviously on a rookie to say that he's going to revitalize their pass rush. I don't think that's going to be the case necessarily, but like, he is an actual pass rusher who will get, attention, will put pressure on the quarterback even if he doesn't get home. So yeah, I think he's a good addition. But I just look at between Todd Bowles and the offense, it's the roster itself. It just feels like it's a bit stuck a few years ago. Like, it doesn't feel like there's been much progression the last couple of years. And again, Todd Bowles is a coach we've talked about being on the hot seat a number of times, and I think he's been lucky to survive the last year. Certainly, I think they should have appointed Liam Cohen instead of letting him go to Jacksonville over Todd Bowles. And I just think they're kind of stuck in this kind of no man's land right now. Baker Mayfield's in a contract year. Do they sign to an extension before the season? I doubt it at this point. Maybe they do, but truthfully, I probably wouldn't either. So
yeah. I mean, they're in that position, I think, a bit stale is probably the word I'd use to describe it. And while they'd won however many AFC Souths, where it was 4 in a row, what they'd won. The record was hovering around 500, and it was just a weakness of the NFC South, probably masked a little bit some of the problems that the Buccaneers have, and they kind of bore themselves out down the stretch last season. That inability to pressure the quarterback, a big one. I think the stats this is 2025 Bucks, they ranked 23rd in sack rate at 5.8%. And that's the lowest for a Todd Bowles defense since the 2017 Jets. So yeah, maybe they've got it in Bain. Obviously, there's a reason why Bain dropped. It's the T-Rex arms again. You'll still love to talk about, but yeah, I think they've probably got a good value pick there in Bain, but it needs more than him. He's not going to be able to again revitalize it on his own. Probably a combination. They got Al-Qadim Mohammed in as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just sort of like a combination of doing it, sort of, revitalize it. But they need help there big time, and Bain's going to have a good year if that's going to make a difference straight away. Sticking in the NFC South, the Saints at 23. I got immediate feedback when I was putting the graphics together. Not happy at being at 23. Resident Saints fan. But again, I think they had a pretty good week draft-wise, and actually just kind of from that kind of back final third of the season, it's been a lot of momentum. I feel like I'd have I ranked them at 23, ended at 23. I feel like if I knew Cam Jordan was coming back, I might have had him up a couple of spots higher.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I have them higher. See, I have them at 20. And I am a little worried that I'm getting ahead of myself and over my skis of, Tyler Shook is good. And, we haven't seen that much of him. He is obviously an experienced rookie. He was older coming out. That was joked about an awful lot last year, me included. I'm not going to make myself innocent of that. If he's what we seen down the stretch last year, I think 20 might be too low. But it was half a dozen games, give or take. Towards the end of the season, I don't know exactly who he's playing against, whether there's any teams not fully committed down the stretch, etc., etc. But if he continues developing, I think their line is really solid. They added David Edwards from Buffalo. You got Kelvin Banks, Edwards, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Taylor Fuaga. I think that's a really strong offensive line if they all stay fit. Jordan Tyson to Chris Olave, I think is really, really good. Obviously, bringing in Travis Achan and Kamara's saying they're going to be a tandem. Well, Kamara better get used to taking the back seat on that tandem because Kamara's washed. Like, I'd love to be proven wrong because I've loved watching Kamara for years in the league. But the last 2 years, he's been garbage. Last year he was one of the worst running backs in the NFL who was getting actual work. Like, I hate saying it because I've loved watching him, but it just looks done. Hopefully I'm wrong. And again, they'll go higher than 20 if Kamara's back to being Kamara, but I just don't think he is. The problems are all on defense. Dennis Allen done Brandon Staley's new DC there. Expect him to do a good job there as a DC rather than a head coach. But just a little, like you said, if you bring back Cam Jordan, you'd be more excited. But there's just not many names in there. There's not much to get you excited about. But if they could just hit a level of competency, be the 25th best defense, I think they should be fun. So, yeah.
Interesting. I like that key. Tyson's, I think, a big pickup for them in the draft. And Olave had 25% of their catches and 29% of their receiving yards last season. That's a huge chunk. You need some more help for
absolutely
Olave and Tyler Shook, of course, as well. And surely, maybe Tyson can bring that and then, spread it out a bit more and obviously give you better opportunities. Vikings next at 22. Again, this is probably the first one we've got a big disparity between us, Byron. I've got the Vikings down at 26. I'm real low on the Vikings in terms of kind of how that season ended and what they've done since. And then you've got them at 18, so you've got them kind of closer to the halfway mark.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me is... the finish with a winning record and not bottom of their division, starting JJ McCarthy, Max Brosmer, and Carson Wentz last year. I just have a lot of it, again, I kind of fell on this sword last year of putting faith in Kevin O'Connell and, Brian Flores to just maximize what they have. I think Kyler Murray, going into a season is the best quarterback they've had in a long time, But Sam Darnold obviously outperformed what we thought Sam Darnold was. So, I'm not going to take any shots on that. But you say, how the season finished last year. They did finish with 5 wins in a row down the stretch, I believe, the Vikings. I just kind of trust that O'Connell's going to have things right. Murray's a really good quarterback. He's really functional, and he has big upside. And I think when you call offense around him, I think he's been really good in the NFL. They've still got Justin Jefferson, still got Jordan Addison, still got TJ Hawkinson. They didn't lose either of the running backs, which I thought they might have to cut Aaron Jones to save money, but he took a pay cut. Jordan Mason, neither of those guys, I think, in 2026 are anything special, but they're both, again, competent and fine enough. You'd hope Aaron Jones can get back to a previous level. I don't really think he will, but a bit like Kamara, there is hope there that he may well do. D tackle obviously had to clear out the veterans, brought in Caleb Banks as a starter immediately, so there's pressure there. But speaking of pressure on defense, again, Brian Flores, I just kind of trust he will figure things out. Harrison Smith going will be a loss, for that veteran leadership. But again, a lot of this is me just saying I think the coaches will figure it out because I think they've got one of the best DCs in the entire NFL. And Kevin O'Connell repeatedly shows over and over. again, if you can have a winning record of the quarterback play they had last year, if you can get Sam Darnold, as I used to said a year ago, to like 14-3, I'm just going to kind of blindly trust that you can be good enough. So that's a lot where this comes from for me.
That's fair. I think that's fair. I think why I'm ranked so low is they had a lot of, I think, glaring needs in the draft, and we're in positions to really attack them, and they chose other paths. I didn't dislike all just. I thought Banks was a strange one at 18.
Agreed.
Especially then when they went and got, because I really like Dominique Orange, Big Citrus, the Iowa State defensive tackle. And I thought he ended up going to sort of middle of the third round, and I thought he was going to probably be a round 2 selection. Really, really like him. So I think you need, obviously, you mentioned how to clear out. Did they need to go get both of those? I don't know. Could you have used that one at 18 on somebody more impact pass rusher? One of the safeties, I think, again, I was stunned it wasn't Thieneman. When they then addressed safety, and later on in the third round, said 3 third-round picks. Jacoby Thomas out of Miami was who they took. I still think they're short at corner, and they spent a 5th-round pick there. And I just think, they had kind of some really, really obvious holes and needs, and they just didn't fill them.
Yeah.
And they can still end up doing that with veteran pickups and training camp cuts and stuff like that. But I just don't think I've done it yet, and that's why I sort of push them down a bit. Steelers at 21, again, pretty consensus around where the Steelers are. The Panthers, the champions of the NFC South, at 20, again, 22, 19, 20, so pretty consensus. The Colts is another one where we've got kind of a bit of a big discrepancy. I've got the Colts ranked at 18, so Colts are 19 in our rankings. I've got them 18. Byron, you've got them at 24. Joe at 19. To me and Joe aligned. You've got the Colts down at 24. What are sort of your feelings on Indy? And is that a lot in terms of as well, kind of how last season ended and how they kind of maybe push the chips in a little bit as well?
Yeah, a little. And I mean, if Danny Dimes comes back and he's Danny Dimes from week 1 through 9 last year, then I'm going to look silly. Obviously, they shouldn't be 24 if that's the case. But again, a bit like I mentioned with Tyler Shook, am I putting too much stock in his good spell? I kind of worry that people are putting too much stock in Daniel Jones' good spell. I don't think they improved the roster because they weren't really in a position to do so, because they traded, picks away. If Sauce Gardner comes back fully fit and himself, then again, this is going to look better. They'll be better than 24. But he has to come back off his ACL. I don't think they've made much in free agency that makes you go like, oh, okay, this team's, reloading, going to go for the, championship again in 2026. And I just think so much is tied to Daniel Jones coming back and being fully firing, because obviously they lost Michael Pittman as well. So, there's extra pressure there on Josh Downs, maybe being a 2 wide receiver set guy. I'm not sure how much more of a ceiling there is on Alec Pierce. Is he going to be someone who gets 120 targets? I don't think so. I think his role is going to stay pretty consistent. Tyler Warren, again, like, how much more is there that he can go up after a really good rookie year? Maybe some, but, unless one of you, the wide receiver 3 on the roster right now, I think is Nick Westbrook-Akine, which that isn't a workable piece. He seems like an Alec Pierce, like, Poundland Alec Pierce, really. There's no one else, on the roster as a pass catcher that I'm like excited about. Jonathan Taylor had a great year last year, but Jonathan Taylor had a great year last year when they were leading. When they were playing from behind, it really didn't work out as you kind of expect to play like Jonathan Taylor. It's the way he is. But I just think if they're not a team who can play from ahead, then I think they're going to struggle this year ultimately. And if they play from ahead, then again, 24 is going to look wildly low.
I think they're, again, tough because of where they were. They didn't really have, obviously, the ammunition to be able to kind of do too much. But I like some of the pickups they made in the, particularly in the draft. CJ Allen, I thought was a great pick, middle of the second round. Again, he was another one that we thought could have maybe snuck in the end of the first. A true leader, a green dot guy, I think, in terms of could be a leader of the defense. So I was impressed there. Obviously, you've got Sauce to come back and things like that. So you've still got players there that should round out and make a really, really strong defense, I think. And I think, can they have that ability to kind of find leads and run the ball again? It's interesting. I don't know, but I think middle of the pack for me. The Colts is kind of I think where they are, and that kind of maybe how their season went from kind of the sublime to the ridiculous as it got kind of down at the end. So yeah, I think middle of the pack for me. Commanders, we have the 18. I think that, again, another one where the Commanders have to go for a big refresh. A lot of older guys on that roster.
Yeah.
Really need a refresh. They kind of went in down the veteran route. Even further after that kind of worked the first year with Jaden Daniels as a rookie getting to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It's not maybe that could push them over. Kind of blew up. Jaden Daniels suffered from injuries. It kind of was a rough season. But in terms of kind of what they've got I think a lot younger and a lot more athletic, particularly on the edges. Yeah. And I love the Sonny Styles pick. I had great value at 7. Unbelievable value. Probably one of my favorite players in the draft. And I think a really good joining up with Dan Quinn, because again, I think anybody who can, you've kind of Bobby Wagner's been there, and Dan Quinn's had Bobby Wagner for a lot of his career. Again, arguably could be turned out into a similar player who's got kind of maybe a bigger ceiling, which again, how good Bobby Wagner's been is quite the compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. And you had obviously the Commanders at 23, Joe 18, and then rounding out our kind of as we get into halfway, the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been reasonable with the Bengals, I think, having them at 17. 17 for me and Joe, 15 for you. I suppose again they kind of no big draft selection because they picked up Dexter Lawrence, and I think a great move for the Bengals.
Yeah, we'll see. It's very an all-in move from the Bengals. I don't love it, but if they make the playoffs this year, go on a run, then it's worth it ultimately. So yeah, I think the price was a little too much for Dexter Lawrence, but just looking at the roster in itself, I think there's a kind of a clear drop-off. We can see it in the totals here. We go from the 60s to 49 for the Bengals here. We didn't touch on the Commanders there, but it feels like those kind of all bunched in a little bit. These kind of teams who might make a wild card push, Commanders, Panthers, Steelers, etc. Well, I think the Bengals can push for their division. I think there's a clear delineation here. We don't need to talk too much about Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. Incredible grouping year on year. And I just think maybe we see some defensive improvement. They have gone, as maybe Washington are actually up there. They've got Al Golden in his second year. They've got Boy Maffei, Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen that came in. They added Cassius Howell as well on the edge. Obviously, they lost Trey Hendrickson to the Ravens, but added Kyle Duggar as well. There's just a lot of additions on that defense, and I think when you're a team like the Bengals, you can't have too many additions on defense because they've been so bad for so many years. So I think they've kind of taken a good approach to it. The offense was relatively left alone. No big outgoings, no big incomings. So, yeah, I like the Bengals here.
Excellent, cool. So that rounds off, I suppose, our third quintiles to get into halfway then. We've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was probably a bit surprised to see. I know we talked on the post-draft episode, our draft review show, that obviously you weren't too impressed with obviously what the Jags had done, but I still kind of thought you'd have them ranked higher. We've got them at 16 here. Me at 16, you at 17, Byron, and Joe at 14.
Yeah, I do struggle because I think I was very much the Jags guy last year as well. Very much all in on them as they were. But again, I don't think they've made a single addition to their starting lineup. And, that can be tough year on year to keep with the same players. Obviously lost Achane, we talked about to New Orleans Saints. So Tootin or Chris Rodriguez is going to be RB1, which doesn't feel like something that fills me with confidence. Pregnon might become a starter at guard, obviously. But other than that, it just felt like a lot of pieces rather than anything that's hugely impactful. But they were really good last year. Hopefully Travis Hunter is fit to play the entire season. It looks like he's going to be good. I'm not sure exactly what his role is going to be. I think he's going to be more corner, but I still think he's going to play plenty at wide receiver. The early reports were like he's just going to be a full-time corner, and Liam Cohen kind of disregarded that yesterday and said the plan's still the plan. So I think he's going to be more corner than last year, but I think he's still going to play both ways, which is exciting. I was kind of surprised I had them as low as I did, truthfully, as well. But I just looked at the other rosters and I was like, it's a tough middle of the pack here. And I couldn't really see where to put them ahead of. So that's where I got to struggle with.
Yeah, and I was pretty unimpressed with their draft. We talked about that. I just didn't understand. Apart from Pregnon, which I think we might save that because he could turn into a good starter for them. And then, again, similar position. Obviously, they traded up their first round pick to go get Travis Hunter last year. I think this. My gut is that it might just be one of those Jags years where they have kind of a really good year, almost out of nowhere, and then they just kind of go through the cycle again. But we'll see. The Dallas Cowboys next. Again, we're pretty aligned. 14-14 for you as well, and then Joe Adam at 16. They're in at 15. Again, it's been a off season that hasn't been particularly dramatic. Maybe the Pickens tag being dragged out is probably the most dramatic thing. He's signed it by all accounts, so he's going to play on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I was to give the Dallas Cowboys off-season overall a grade, I'd probably say it's a solid A.
Absolutely. And like we talked about with the Bengals, it's basically defense, a little sprinkling of offensive pieces here and there. But again, starting lineup of the offense unchanged. Defense, big additions too. I kind of wanted them to try and get them a bit higher than 14, but there's so much question mark around the defense. Again, like the Bengals, I love how they've done it. Like Washington, I love how they throw enough at the wall and some are sick. Caleb Downs obviously is at the wall, but some good players in there as well. So it's kind of the same question as Baltimore and as Washington. Bengals and Washington. How much can the defense jump up from, worst in the league or close to worst in the league, if not exactly, to, where's the ceiling? Is it 16? Is it 10? Teams can have weird years of, turnover. Luck can completely swing, and you go from being one of the worst defenses to the top echelon of them. And I do think it's fair to expect some regression from the offense because they were absolutely lights out last year, all season, basically. So I think, if they come back from being a top 3 or 4 offense to top 10 offense, but the defense goes from 32 to 20, then I think 14 is absolutely fair. I think they can push for the division, depending on how Philly does with new coaching. But I think on paper, you'd say Philadelphia have the talent advantage right now.
Yeah, I am, again, intrigued about a lot. Again, I think they fixed a lot. Having a really good free agency, I think, set up the draft for them pretty well. I think they did a good job in free agency in terms of Jalen Thompson. They got Locke in as well as just depth at safety. And then you've added down to that in the draft as well. I think having those, maybe 3 safeties, gives you lots of versatility. It's such an upgrade, I think, on where Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson were or are. For sure in that safety room. I think still think they're a cornerback short if they can do something to make that happen. I still think maybe what a cornerback short. And then I'm really excited. The 7th round pick, Anthony Smith out of East Carolina, I'm starting to fall in love with. He just doesn't go. Once he gets the ball, they just can't get him down. He just cannot be tackled when he gets the ball. I'm sure, once he makes a catch. So interesting to see. I think he could be, you look at, obviously, you've got Lamb and Pickens. After that, Ryan Flournoy maybe, and then Smith. I think he's got an option of making a chance of making the team as 4th, because I think maybe the Cavante Turpin experiment might be over because he's just not getting the touches to make it worthwhile. And
it reminds me of when I first started watching the NFL, or certainly a few years into it, was I always thought like Devin Hester. Why don't the Bears use him on offense? It just makes so much sense, and it just doesn't work out. Like these return guys are return specialists for a reason. It doesn't necessarily translate. It's worth persevering with a little, like, throw a touch in there, here and there. Certainly worth a try, but they're never going to be the wide receiver 3.
Yeah. All right, next up again, probably we've got a couple more teams where we've got probably some big discrepancies. The Packers next. We've got them at 14. I have them at 10. Byron at 16. Again, this is another one where tied up in what they traded for Micah Parsons. So again, such a little room for them to do anything massive in the draft or anything drastic in the draft. But how are you feeling kind of about the Packers? Like I say, you've got them there kind of really middle of the road.
Yeah, it's kind of how I felt about them going into last year as well. And I think, I felt a bit silly after signing Micah Parsons and everyone of them was like near Super Bowl favorites. And then they're kind of just like, as soon as Micah Parsons went out, they lost the last 5 games of the year, including the playoff loss to the Bears. And then I hate I kind of hate their off season. Like they're now looking at pass catchers, Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Christian Watson, and Sky Moore, Savion Williams behind that. Let's not even bother. Tucker Kraft returning from an ACL has got to be Tucker Kraft immediately, in my opinion. Josh Jacobs, I thought, had a down year, and he's not old, but like he's been in the league a long time, so he's got plenty of wear and tear. And then again, nothing really behind him. So I just worry they're very like top heavy on players who haven't been proven injury wise to stay fit over a number of seasons. And then defensively, they added Brandon Cisse with their first pick, which is an area of need at cornerback. But otherwise, throughout the entire process, from losing to the Bears to today, I just don't really know. No, I don't think the roster's improved. I think the roster's got worse ultimately. And I think it's a bit of a hot seat year for Matt LaFleur because he had a bit of a weird year, weird circumstance to end the year where there was talk that he might move on, someone might trade for him. Obviously, the loss of DC. Jeff Hafley's gone to Miami, and they've got Jonathan Gannon, beep, in there to replace him. And I know plenty of Eagles fans who were pretty happy that Jonathan Gannon left when they won the Super Bowl, and they kind of felt like they won the Super Bowl in spite of Jonathan Gannon as DC, not because of him, certainly. So I just look at their roster and I'm just like so uninspired, ultimately, that I kind of feel like because Green Bay, they'll probably finish better than I have them at 16, but trying to be objective and just looking at what they have and who they have, I just struggle to be moved by it. What are you seeing as in top 10?
Yeah, look, probably a little bit of kind of your Kevin O'Connell piece as well around kind of Matt LaFleur. Like all he does is win, right? Like all he's done in the regular season with the Green Bay Packers is win. So, I'm kind of think they'll again. I think probably if they had a little bit better off season, I might have had them like top 8. But I think 10 probably where they're at. I think they've got 10 to get again fairly consistent overall quarterback play. The receivers, I think Love can cope with it. Like he's kind of managed that. We've always. Yeah, it's not really been one of those young Green Bay Packers receivers that's kind of really ever sort of stepped up. They do it in kind of fits and spurts. So I think he'll be able to kind of manage and deal with that. Again, if they get like a bit of a veteran in, again, when cuts happen and things like that, maybe that'll help round that out. Kraft, again, is the injury. People do seem to come back a lot better from these injuries now than they did a few years ago. Yeah. Obviously, he's very dynamic. And obviously, he was having an unbelievable season. And I like a little bit what they've done to try and complement Parsons a little bit on the defense. I like the Penn State edge rusher, Danny Sutton, that they drafted in the 4th round. I think, again, they need someone to... What you really need to do, I suppose, when you have Mike Parsons, very much like kind of others did with the Cowboys at times, you need everybody else to kind of take advantage of how much attention he gets and really kind of get home. So you kind of need 2 or 3 guys to kind of get close to kind of 10 sacks as well to do it. And I think Dennis Sutton could be one of those guys, just benefiting from all the attention that Parsons gets when he returns. So yeah, I like them at 10. And they ultimately have one of the best defensive players in the NFL as well, who's a true game record difference maker. Yeah, in my comparison, so that's why I've got them at 10. The Bears, we've got them at 13 again. Me and Joe quite far apart, and then 8, 13 for you, Byron, and 15. Do you still think the Bears have got an edge problem?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't address it, right? I don't think.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
So yeah, and they won a lot of like weird games last year, which I'm not sure how repeatable that is. But then again, I do have faith that Ben Johnson will continue to be a really good coach and may well keep improving what he has around him. So this was a real tough one, truthfully. I didn't feel like they should be 13, but I couldn't really justify putting them ahead of teams I had ahead of them on like kind of what's on the roster and who's coaching it. So I did have a real struggle with the Bears because I do think 13 feels low. I'm expecting an elite forward from Luther Burden. But, the loss of Drew Dahlman and, their inability, we'll see if they replaced him. They took on Logan Jones in the draft, which I think is a real upside player, the Ohio State. I think he's Ohio State, maybe Iowa. Sorry, I get the two mixed up. Center. But he was crucially, there's this Josh Norris Moneyball O-lineman stat of, if you do the 20-yard shuttle in under, I think it's 4.77, then you will likely be a really good O-lineman in the NFL. Regardless of where you were drafted. And he was the only player this year who hit that criteria. So I do have kind of faith that they can do that. Garrett Bradbury, I think, is just a turnstile. So the sooner Logan Jones get up to speed and come onto that line, the better. But I think that Drew Dalman retirement kind of threw them for a bit of a loop, give them a position they needed to improve. That again, they could have maybe used more capital on the edge to try and address there. So yeah, my worry is more like the reverting to those one score games, those weird games last year, the Raiders, the Packers down the stretch. If those flip around, then you go from winning a playoff game to not making the playoffs. So I think the margins are really fine. I just kind of struggle with them as like an elite team. And obviously, one of the things we do need to see is like really consistent play from Caleb Williams. The highs are so good. But even last year, in year 2, there was plenty of lows. So if we could see them lows disappear, and maybe the highs don't even need to be as high as like that incredible play in the playoff game to Cole Kmet down the sideline, I think it was, or Colton Loveland, one of the Titans. It doesn't need to be that high every week, but like if we just cut out the low plays, I think there's a real ceiling there for Caleb Williams. You have him at 8 though, so I'm lower than you. What's putting them higher for you?
Yeah, I think obviously there is that edge problem, I guess, as well, that still needs to be fixed. But again, I think that could come with veterans and as we go. Love the theme of it. They've revamped that kind of secondary, which I think that was kind of as much as kind of the lack of pressure and effective pass rush was an issue. That back 7 at times was a mess. They lived off the turnovers, but they gave up a lot of big plays consistently. And while they've lost some of those turnovers in like Kevin Byard, when they lost him, they've lost Brisker. They signed Kobe Bryant. They've got Thieneman in. I think they're in a much better position in that secondary, and I think that will help them. And that helps a pass. Conversely, a pass rush can help a secondary, and a secondary can help a pass rush. And so I think they're in a position where they can hold up a lot better in coverage, I think, now, and that might help that pass rush a little bit. And obviously, the two can help each other in different ways. But yeah, I like them. And they can get potentially cycle some guys in, get some depth, a pass rusher. And look, the way the board was falling, they didn't feel that they were getting their right guys, or the guys that they were think that they could help them in those positions, and they couldn't move up to go get them. Then I think they're in an okay position. Looking forward to seeing year 3 Caleb as well, and kind of how that kind of pass catching group goes. I've been a little bit underwhelmed in Roma Dunze. I'm hoping he makes like a bit of a big breakout in year 3 as well, and has kind of a big season as well. So yeah, I think there's lots to be excited by for the Chicago Bears, and hopefully they're in as many exciting games again, because it was hell of a watch down the stretch.
And I'm sure they'll be on prime time a lot.
Yeah, big time. Looking forward to that. The Chiefs we've got next at 12 then. 12, 9, and 13. I think the Chiefs addressed what they needed to. Got players in where they needed to. They got signed the Super Bowl MVP. Needed desperate help at running back, because it's just been a mess of just not being able to run the ball. For a while now for the Chiefs. So got Patrick Mahomes some help there, and then spent their first 4 draft picks on defense and were aggressive as well. Went up to get Mansour Delaney as kind of the top corner. Obviously that helps and lessens the blow of losing the 2 corners to the Rams, one by trade and one in free agency, and then got somebody in at defensive tackle, Peter Woods, who again was somebody we were looking at who will be around the end of the first round from Clemson. So yeah, I think the Chiefs have gone about kind of a bit of a mini rebuild, quite quietly, really, and just gone about the business. And I think they are, setting themselves up right.
Totally agree. Yeah, I've got them top 10 just on that kind of trust factor again. Love everything they've done in the offseason, really. I wouldn't have minded seeing another receiver come in to right now I think it's Tyquan Thornton will be the wide receiver 3. And he had the spells last year, but I kind of worry he's a little bit similar to Worthy in kind of like, pure burner, essentially. Thornton does it more downfield than Worthy does traditionally in the Chiefs. But I think if they can add another pass catcher, I'd feel even better about them at 9.
Yeah. All right. Next up there, 11. Again, probably our biggest, another one of our bigger discrepancies. The Los Angeles Chargers or the Los Angeles Charbars. Barry, you've got them at the top 5. You've got them at 5th, top 5. What is it about kind of how the Chargers have gone about the business, or what is it that they've done that you think propels them to be worthy of a top 5 power ranking?
Well, one of the biggest things that I'll say kind of off the bat is that I feel like there's a cluster after the top few teams down to about 10, 11 for me. So there's probably not as big a difference between like 5 and 10, 11 to me as there is like even maybe like 13 to 17, despite the numbers obviously being a bit whack there. But I kind of love an awful lot of what they've done. They've strengthened the entirety of the interior of the offensive line. Got Tyler Biadasz, I think, is a great addition at center. I'm not sure why the Commanders released him, but I think he's going to step in and be an improvement. They've got Cole Strange, more of a work in progress, but I forgot the guy's name. The former Jet, Eagle, guard, big guy, who never quite worked out for the Chargers last year. I've forgotten his name. He was a Super Bowl winner with the Eagles. He transitioned to right guard from tackle when he was with the Jets. You know what I'm talking about. Maybe you've forgotten his name as well. And then they added Jake Slaughter at guard as well through the draft in the second round. So I feel like getting those all linemen in place was really important. Obviously, we've got Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater coming back to fitness. So I think if that all line's in place, and what I love is the fit of Mike McDaniel. You let him cook with Jim Harbaugh in there already. He's added Keaton Mitchell. He added Brennan Thompson, pure speedsters. I love the Charlie Kohler addition again, someone who's a bit more of a blocking tight end, someone who's going to let Gadsden go out and run his routes. They've been talking to David Njoku this week. I don't think that's a needle mover either way. Might upset Gadsden owners in fantasy football, but I don't think he's going to be like someone who comes in and takes 150 targets. Again, another team who I think can add a wide receiver or pass catcher, certainly. They lost Keenan Allen. I don't think Michael Daniel's going to have an interest in bringing Keenan Allen back because he doesn't run a 4.340, and he probably runs about a 5.340 at this point in his career, truthfully. He'll catch a lot of balls, but for not much yardage. The loss of Jesse Minter is obviously, we'll see how that is to be felt, but I trust Jim Harbaugh again to appoint the right people. He's done it a lot throughout his career to keep that defense ticking over. And yeah, it's kind of just a bit of a continuation. I like the Chargers last year, despite how they finished the season. And I think just getting those 2 tackles back should put them back in, the top 8 contention. Again, 5 might seem a little high, but like I said, the difference between 5 and, the Niners I have at 12 really isn't too much. Whereas the difference between say the Cowboys at 14 and, even like the Steelers at 21 is a lot to me. So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you have him a lot lower than me though. So shoot.
Yeah, I think I'm still worried. I'm still worried about the O-line. I'm still worried about it. I know you've got the 2. I think it's probably the big combination of the big injuries for those 2, the lack of depth, and a bit of improvement on the interior. I mean, Jake Slaughter, the center out of Florida, is probably going to play guard, or I think they've announced him as guard, so he's going to play guard. And that's a good pickup. I'm just very worried about that. And then, it's too much for Herbert then. And I like the pick of Mesidor. I still thought maybe they could do with a little bit more on that D-line as well. But yeah, I'm just still worried. Obviously, they threw a couple of late round draft picks at the interior of the O-line as well. Logan Taylor from Boston College and Alex Harkey from Oregon. But I just don't think it's enough. And that's kind of where I'm at with them. The Lions, then, we've got a 10, 13, 10, and 9 pretty line. The Niners, Joe's Niners, me and Joe got me top 10, 9, and 8, respectively, and you've got them as 12. Confusing draft from the Niners, but it feels like they always are.
Yeah, very well said, yeah. And truthfully, I like the free agency more than I like the draft. I think bringing in Mike Evans is really smart, but the wide receiver group is still pretty thin. We've got Pearsall, Kirk, Evans. And one of the kind of biggest question marks for me right now is when is George Kittle back and how is George Kittle back?
Yeah.
I think that offense, Trent Williams is such a huge piece of it, obviously. But when Kittle's not there, it doesn't function the same as when he is there. I mean, again, that's kind of obvious. He's a very special player, but he just does so much of everything that, the difference between him and on the field and him not on the field, could be the difference between 12 and 6 or, realistically, 12 and top 5 is not crazy for the Niners the way they're coached. But yeah, I just didn't love a lot of the. I don't know if bringing Dre Greenlaw back is like a super smart decision or is it a bit sentimental because they needed bodies. But if Nick Bosa and Fred Warner are back fully fit, if everyone is back fully fit and the substation has stopped the voodoo with them, then they're obviously going to be an upper echelon team. So I don't think there's much to dislike about the Niners. They're just not super excited, I guess. But I love the Mike Evans edition.
Excellent. Right, let's head to our top 8 then. Houston Texans sneaking the top 8. Again, I have them at 11. Similar piece to the Chargers, I think. I'm still not. I don't think they've done enough. I don't think they've done enough on that O-line. You have them at 4. Obviously, we know we love the defense, and a couple more additions to the defense as well, adding to that strength. But yeah, you've got them up at 4, Byron. What else is it that the Texans have done that makes you think actually they can go deep in the playoffs again?
Well, they have made changes to the O-line, so I think they've improved it kind of by not doing as much as obviously we'd like, but I think it's just improved by adding new pieces in there. D'Amico Ryans is the coach. David Montgomery, I think, is a huge upgrade on what they had at running back last year as well. And I kind of just struggle that CJ Stroud's going to be as bad as he was for a lot of last season. And I think if this defense, I don't see why this defense would fall off, but like even if they take a little step down, I think the offense can step up enough to keep them at that upper level of essentially blowing bad teams out and competing with really good teams, which I think is a lot of what you need to do in the NFL. I'd love to say we'll get Tank Dell back, but that's obviously a wait and see. Yeah. But I think Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins showed a little improvement down the stretch again to suggest that they should improve in year 2. And then I kind of loved, they obviously got Kalen Rutledge in the first round, but then they went with Ken McDonald early in the second round, and it was just like, okay, like they're not resting on the laurels here. Like they're still improving the defense. Blankenship came in as a starter as well. And I think just like keeping the glue of that defense together and just like putting little pieces in to improve as you go, I think is just really smart. And yeah, I think there's just some improvement by the offense. Some additions on the offensive line, even if not like huge name grabbers. And I don't think CJ Stroud can continue being this bad forever. I've seen him at his best, and it was worlds away from what we're seeing last year. So I'm just expecting a little regression from him.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Patriots at 7. We talked about a little bit about this off just before we started recording. The biggest factor in where I rank the Patriots isn't going to be anything to do with the players, I don't think, immediately. It's going to be with what the hell is going on with Mike Vrabel. Now, I don't expect anything to change, but week after week at this point, another little thing keeps coming out about his, affair.
Yeah.
And we know Robert Kraft, like, I don't know if he's just going to stand around and watch this continue to happen bit by bit. Certainly not the Patriot way. How much damage has been done in terms of kind of Vrabel's a big culture guy, right? It's about accountability and it's about making sure, a little bit of Belichick, do your job sort of stuff. When this kind of massive thing and story and distraction happens, how big of an impact do you think it's going to have on the group of players who look to him as being their leader?
It's a really interesting. I think it's really hard to quantify, really, because I do also think like we should expect some regression anyway for schedule based. So like if they go, I don't know, we don't know what the schedule is yet, obviously, but if they go 2-2, do we say the players aren't respecting right now? Or is it just, they've gone 2-2 because that's what teams do coming off a big year when they've got a harder opponent? I think there's part of me that thinks he doesn't make it till September, that it just gets too much. And like, if another bombshell drops rather than like another drip feed of something, I think it might just be too much. Like, you are a distraction to the team. You've got to go for the best of the team. So, but like, we don't know that. Obviously, that hasn't happened. So that's just me kind of speculating. I think if nothing else major comes out and he's owned it with the team that, yeah, I've been having an affair, blah, 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 whatever he does in his private and personal life, is kind of his business to a degree. I know he's a public figure, but like, if he's owned it with his team and he's owned it with Robert Kraft that, yes, it's happened, then these things shouldn't really be an issue. Because, like the most recent one when we're recording is that him and Vrabel hired a boat when she was pregnant, and they went on a day trip or something on a boat on a lake or something, whatever. Well, if the team knows that he's been having an affair for 6 years, then okay, that you're going to find out things that happened during that 6 years that we don't know today. But if his team know that, I've already told you I had an affair at that time, then why are you surprised I was on a boat with the lady? Like, I don't think there's really much more that's going to be impacting inside the Patriots building. If he told them it was a one-time thing at the spa in Arizona, then I think he's got real issues of credibility in his building, because the players have to trust your coach. You have to be able to look at him and like, this is my guy, this is my leader. I run through a brick wall because he says so, because he's Mike Vrabel. So without knowing that part, I'm going to presume, because we haven't heard anything otherwise, that he's told his players, he's told his ownership that, yep, we had an affair since at least 2020, because that's the earliest date we know of. I shouldn't have, what, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And things are fine. We'll see on that thing. But I think until we see new information about that, I think you've got to kind of presume that that's what's happened.
To be fine. I think, speaking of like running for a brick wall, the O-line in the postseason, particularly in the Super Bowl, didn't act like a brick wall. And I think, obviously, that was... And we bear in mind, I think we forget that left side of that Patriots defensive line had two rookies in it that played all. So now I think they will get better. I know Will Campbell caught for a lot. In Super Bowl, also kind of the playoff run as a whole, I think he will get better. And I think they've picked up somebody in the first round in Caleb Lomu, who's going to be their long-term right tackle, kind of Morgan Moses replacement. Caleb Lomu for Utah, he's a real solid pick. And there's interesting because he played a lot of left tackle. I wonder, could you flip him and Will Campbell at some point, maybe? And Campbell plays right, maybe, and he plays left. I don't know, but I think they're giving themselves some options, and they've got a lot of, again, high draft stock in that old. You can have a lot of high draft stock in that old line. I think they could bookend and have two really good young tackles that could play for a very long time in the NFL, and that's a good foundation to have when you've got, now a second-year quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or third-year quarterback, sorry.
And, we've made a joke on the draft show about Vrabel and Rossini being the worst kept secret in football, but I think what the worst kept secret in football is that AJ Brown's going to be a Patriot. To the extent that, and I think this is kind of wild, every year I, do projections for fantasy tournaments, charity tournaments based on their weird scoring. I always use Mike Clay at ESPN's scoring setup, his initial projection, because I think he's the best and he has very comprehensive projections. He has AJ Brown as a New England Patriot. And like, this isn't for a bit. Like, he didn't tweet it out. I tweeted him saying like, fucking hell, like Mike Clay's wasted no time. And he just liked it. He didn't reply and say like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, it's that much of an open secret. Like ESPN, whatever Stephen A or Skip Bayless are like caught in headlines. Mike Clay isn't. Like, he's just doing his projections because was what he thinks is happening. He didn't have Fernando Mendoza on the Raiders until they drafted him. And he's got AJ Brown on the Patriots on May 7th. So
worldwide leader in sports.
Yeah, I think we can pencil that one in then. So, that is, you had Romeo Dobbs, who I think's sneaky underrated throughout his career. Had AJ Brown. Tougher schedule for New England, obviously, but I don't think the team should fall back necessarily.
Yeah. Interesting to see how this continues to break over the next couple of months. Broncos at 6. Again, discredit 5, got 4. You've got them at 11. I think, brother, I really love the Jalen. I love the Waddle trade. Yeah. Go get somebody else. You've got then kind of two slightly different profiles in Sutton and Jalen Waddle, and I think they can complement each other really well. You got kind of the ups and downs of Bo Nix, I guess, at times. But again, he's had 2 seasons now where they've just won. Again, all they've done is win games, and and I think you're hoping Waddle unlocks kind of that deep part of the field for Nix, and Sutton can then maybe feast more over the middle and take advantage of the space created there as well. So yeah, I really like the move. I like the aggression. The kind of that we've got this defense as it is now. It's one of the best in the NFL. Let's go for it. So I liked it, and that's why I had them ranked inside the top 5. I had them ranked at 4. Anything else on the Broncos?
No, I just worry there might be some defensive fallback a little, and maybe Bo Nix isn't quite as efficient as he has been. So again, this group below the top 2 to me, truthfully, is really bunched. So just slight little worries for me, and obviously we need to see Bo Nix come back from his injury as well.
Yeah.
So if he's not right, then that'll ding them a lot because he's been the heartbeat of that team for 2 years.
Yeah. So the Ravens then at 5. So I'm at 7, you at 3. Byron and Joe's got them at 6. New head coaching, Jesse Minter. They drafted a mauler in the first round of the draft. I think a player that we all love in Vega Ioane. And I think they've obviously gone out of the way to try and get Lamar Jackson a couple more options at wide receiver. Really like the Jacoby Lane pickup in the 3rd round. They got Sarrett from Indiana as well. I think they're making, try to address kind of some of their weaker areas, and again, gone and smashed it, I think.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that would drop them back down for me would be if Madubuike doesn't return. I'm working under the assumption that he's going to. It's May now. I think if he was retiring, like there was some speculation, I think it would have happened by now.
We'd probably know, yeah.
Yeah, so, and they did have Calais Campbell back to Baltimore, I think. He's been a Raven before. I always get mixed up with Campbell's teams. And then he had Trey Hendrickson. He got Zion Young in the 2nd round, I believe. So just Hendrickson, obviously, an elite pass rusher, and Zion Young, someone to bring along with him. So, I like everything they did, really. And I love the coaching hire, Jesse Minter.
Yeah, so we've got the Ravens at 5. At 4, we've got the Bills. Feels like the Bills, particularly draft-wise, there was a lot of depth that they sort of sourced in the draft. Again, they moved down a lot. I mean, it's like me, just like moved down like 3 or 4 times on the clock. They moved down. But I think they've got a lot of depth. Again, they're going to rely on Josh Allen doing a lot of the carrying. I like Skylar Bell as a sneaky light. I think he could work really well with Josh Allen. Again, kind of. I don't think we're too far away from the Keon Coleman experience Keon Coleman experience coming to an end in Buffalo. They might leave him in the old stadium, might leave him at Orchard Park before they move across the road. Kind of apart from that, I think they got safety position improved. I think a lot from free agents. They got CJ Gardner Johnson and Geno Stone before they drafted Kilgore as well. And they've also got Cole Bishop already in there. I think he got a lot. He was a lot stronger last year. So I like a lot of kind of what the Bills' natural improvement that we'd expect to see of them. And then just some more low-key of the free agency and draft picks that they've made.
Yeah, I think, again, you'd like to see him do more work. Like DJ Moore, Skylar Bell, I think could be fine addition. But I think they're still lacking that one piece where you go okay, here we go. We're really backing Josh Allen here. But I do like the majority of the things they've done, like you say. Bradley Chubb and TJ Parker again, a bit like you said with Baltimore, get the older guy, younger guy. One can bring on the other. So and it's going to be the first year at the new stadium, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I always forget about that until you just mentioned it. So yeah, hopefully an exciting first year for the Bills because boy, do their fans deserve it, right?
Yeah, and we've got them at 4. The Eagles, we've got 3. I had them at 3. You at 7. Joe at 5. Again, Mikael Lennon, a lot to be excited about. Is that an AJ Brown replacement? I don't know. We'll see. Probably going to find out on June the 1st or June the 2nd for sure. Traded for Wicks. Also picked up Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore to obviously round out that room. That would certainly be a strong suggestion that AJ Brown is going. Got Grenard, lost Jalen Phillips. I really like Stowers that they picked up in the 2nd round.
Me too.
Again, could end up being a wide receiver. I don't know if he's going to actually be a tight end or not, but him at Vanderbilt worked magic with Diego Pavia. So yeah, I think the Eagles again, just a lot of good moves. Again, we just kind of say it time and time again about the Eagles in the off season, don't we?
Yeah, and I think there's another 2 that you didn't mention there as well. Jonathan Grenard. Apologies if you did, then I passed over them.
Yeah, but it's fine.
And Tariq Woolen, who both come in as starters. Both maybe a bit of a point to prove because I think Tariq Woolen probably expected a bigger contract. He's had up and down play in Seattle, but I think, again, Vic Fangio, I trust to get the best out of him because it's what Vic Fangio does by and large. And I don't think you mentioned this one in your wide receiver. Sorry if you did, and I again glossed over, but Dontavian Wicks has worked with...
You're just not listening.
Well, you said Elijah Moore and Hollywood Brown. I don't think you said Dontavian Wicks.
I promise you.
My apologies. But he worked with Sean Mannion the last 2 years in Green Bay, so he knows Mannion and Mannion knows Wicks. So I think in terms of like changing that offense, he might be someone that we see more importance from than we have in prior years. Obviously, his hands have always been an issue, but he does get open. He does get downfield. He's not a player that I'd rule out as being a contributor, even though he has been a bit of a fun figure. And kind of with that upswing of, Sean Mannion hopefully changes things from last year, it is another new OC for Jalen Hurts. Hopefully, the adaptation period is smooth sailing for them, but you do worry about it every single year. It's a new thing, so I wouldn't like to sign off that like it's definitely going to be an improvement, but you certainly expect it to be, because last year really got ugly there, didn't it? Let's be blunt.
It did, yeah. On to our number 2 then. So again, the 2 and 1 are unanimous. We've got the Rams at 2. All of us had the Rams at 2. If they'd have got a piece at 13 that was going to help them now, I'd have them at 1. Any piece, offensive, defensive. Hell, if they took a kicker, I don't know. No, maybe not. But if it
Ahead of the
anybody,
kicker.
They've got a thicker kicker. They don't.
Come on.
If they'd taken anybody that could contribute or was likely to contribute now, then I'd have them at 1, because I think they addressed again the few problems they had. They addressed them well through trade and free agency. They got the 2 corners in, which is probably their weakest point. I know they lost Kobe Bryant, but they've got McDuffie and Watson, and he ultimately, arguably, was the reason why they maybe lost to the Seahawks in the AFC Championship game. And they've gone and fixed that. And they're strong kind of across everywhere else.
Absolutely.
And McCann Lemon was right there.
Yeah, I was just looking at our lads page there, depth chart. And, it's Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, and then Jordan Whittington at slot receiver. And you think, boy, you put Mekhi Lemon there, you are cooking with gas. Obviously, they've then got 75 tight ends who are going to rotate in and out all day. And the Ty Simpson thing makes less and less sense. Like, the more we do exercises like this, like, you look at that, the defensive front as well. Fisk, Poona Ford, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Jared Verse. Imagine having Ruben Bain in there.
Yeah.
Like, so many could have beens that just aren't Ty Simpson. And, if in 5 years, if Ty Simpson's won his second MVP and he's won a Super Bowl, then you go, hey, fair play. They had the vision. We look stupid. Whatever Mekhi Lemon goes on to do, if Ty Simpson's a multi-time MVP, then it's the right thing to do. It's just hard to see that today.
And it's real hard. It's the hardest thing to do in the NFL is find franchise quarterbacks. It is. And you're going to go through potentially some pain when Matthew Stafford, calls it a day, which... And he's 38. Like, when you look at, and he's been very beat up as well, Stafford. But when you look at Brady and Rodgers, like, he could go 3. Well, he could go to like 41, 42.
He absolutely could, yeah.
He's not showing signs. I don't think he's showing many signs of slowing down. Doesn't look like he's losing his arm strength. Like,
he is the current MVP.
And he's exactly.
Let's not we don't need to try and find weaknesses. Like, he's literally the most valuable player in football.
So I just feel like they're maybe a year early in trying to find that replacement, and this focus should have been let's win a second championship in 4 years, or second championship in 5 years, or whatever that gap is from when they won it in 2021. So I don't know, but that's why I had him at 2. I think the Seahawks were again resounding at 1. I kept the Seahawks at 1 just because I think they did again okay in draft. It's hard when you're picking 32, isn't it? But they did an okay job in the draft. I'm just worried about what they've lost. I think is probably more from the Seahawks. But I still think right now, as champions, they've got kind of the place at 1 until they start losing some games.
Yeah, and I don't think they lost that much on the roster, especially on defense. I think they, by and large, managed to keep the group together. So, obviously, you lose Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl MVP, but, like, I don't want to say it, but he's just a running back. Not the end of the world. The offense didn't run through Kenneth Walker, by and large, throughout his career in Seattle. And they added Jadarian Price. They added Emmanuel Wilson. And it's going to be running back by committee because that's what Seattle always do. So, you'd love to have Walker still in there, but, not to be. And again, I kind of on the same kind of line of like, until they show otherwise, the way Mike McDonald calls defense and gets them guys schemed up and motivated, it's hard to see past them. Like, say, if the Rams had a killer offseason rather than a good one, maybe I'd have put the Rams above them despite that. But I don't think there's anybody who was already good and then blew everyone out the water in the draft and free agency. So I think Seattle well worth their place at 1 here.
Excellent. That rounds off our first power rankings, I guess, of the 2026 season as a whole. And we'll probably do a bit more, probably do one more before the season starts, I think, or after the schedule, maybe. Schedules drop, which should be next week, I think. So we'll sort of find out which teams are coming to the UK. We know kind of some of the other matchups, the Brazil matchup, the Australia matchup already. We'll find out who else is coming to Europe to play in Spain, Germany as well. And yeah, like we've got some other great episodes lined up to come over the next few weeks. Some interviews as well. Some more focus on the college game as we build up towards the Union Jack Classic coming to Wembley. Hopefully, we'll be able to do a bit more on the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin. Fingers crossed. We will see if we get the nod. But in the meantime, make sure you go follow because that will help. Good teams and great teams cover. Podcast available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, video version on YouTube, and then follow all our social media channels at GTW_GTC, Twitter, Instagram, X, no, I haven't done this for a while, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at GTW_GTC, and we'll catch you next time.